Good morning.
Well, there's a PPIC tomorrow. Are you flying?
Good morning and welcome to the November meeting of the San Diego Regional Water Quality Control Board. I will call the meeting to order and remind attendees to please, if you haven't already, there's a sign-up sheet in the back. There's also speaker cards. If you wish to speak in the public forum or on any specific item on the agenda, please fill out one of those cards. There's green ones if you're in favor, red ones if you're not in favor, blue ones if you're in between. There's also a QR code back there so you can do it on your phone. With that, Chris, can you call a roll, please? See if we have a quorum.
Ms. Cantu,
Here.
Dr. Olson,
Here.
Ms. Tu,
Here.
Ms. Warren.
Here.
Chair Strawn,
Here.
we have a quorum.
Great, thank you. We have a quorum. At this time, we'll go into the public forum. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to make their comments, both in person or on Zoom. And these are comments for items that are not on the agenda today. Do we have anybody from the public that would like to address the board this morning? Do we have anybody online? No, good. So we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is approval of the board minutes from October 8th. Do we have any questions or comments on those minutes, or I'll entertain a motion to approve?
I'll move approval.
A second?
I second it. I can second.
Again? Can you call the roll, please? The roll for approving the minutes. Yes, we do. Betty approved it and Yen seconded it.
Aye.
Dr. Olson,
Aye.
Ms. Tu,
Aye.
Ms. Warren,
Abstain.
Chair Strawn,
Aye.
motion carries.
Okay. Next item, item 2, our state board liaison, Nicole Morgan. You're gonna come talk to us this morning. Great, thank you. Thanks for coming down. I know it's an arduous trip to get down from Sacramento.
Good morning, Chair Strawn and members of the board. It's a pleasure to join you in person today. So let's see here. So on November 5th, the State Board held a public workshop on the draft Tuolumne River Voluntary Agreement Proposal. It was on the scientific basis report that State Board staff prepared. During the public workshop, staff from the State Board provided a presentation that was followed by public comments. The draft Tuolumne River VA scientific basics report is a necessary prerequisite. It's necessary before the State Board can consider the proposed voluntary agreement for the Tuolumne River, which would require potential updates to the water quality control plan for the San Francisco Bay, Sacramento, San Joaquin Delta Estuary Plan, which is also called the Bay Delta Plan. So then also the Delta Conveyance Project, which is under ex parte, on October 22nd, the Administrative Hearing Office released its 8th Amendment hearing notice for the Delta Conveyance Project's hearings. And the last site visit occurred just this past Monday, and the next hearing will be on November 17th. Additional information can be found on the Administrative Hearing Officer or AHO's webpage. Last week on November 4th, the State Board adopted the fiscal year 25-26 fund expenditure plan for the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Fund. So I was stopped a little bit later than normal. That was just around some of the, excuse me, early sorry about that, swallowed a little wrong. So, so that was just around some of the early uncertainty regarding the federal funding. We took a little bit of a pause, came back to it. We adopted the state revolving funds, and then we then incorporated those requirements into the fund expenditure plan, and now we've adopted it. So all of our funding plans are adopted for this fiscal year, and we did continue in the meantime distributing funds. So changing subjects to the agriculture expert panel, it was convened. This is our second panel, and so state board staff are holding basically public working group meetings. And so those have been ongoing. And so they are going to continue on Friday, November 14th and Wednesday, November 19th to facilitate the panel's deliberations on issues relevant to the panel charge questions. So there's a list of questions that were posed to the panel. Their panel has been working their way through those questions. And so state board members may be present at the meetings or maybe on Zoom, but no decisions will be made. On October 29th, the Deputy Director for the Division of Drinking Water issued new and revised notification levels for PFOA, PFAS, PFHXS, PFHXA. And so those levels are posted on our webpage. If you would like, I can also send those directly to you. And so those were issued on October 29th. Another item that is going on is the stormwater capture and use workshop. So that's part of our storms program. It's been going on for quite a while. It somewhat slowed down a little bit. We are picking that effort back up on November 18th. And so we're going to be holding a public workshop during our regularly scheduled board meeting. The workshop item is scheduled to begin no earlier than 1 p.m. Staff and invited experts and practitioners will provide updates on current projects and highlight case studies that demonstrate practical approaches to overcoming regulatory, funding, and technical barriers. Topics will include an overview of the State Water Board's strategy to optimize resource management of stormwater. That is the storms program. Examples of local capture and use projects such as public lands irrigation and school greening, discussion of funding opportunities, including stormwater credit systems and state financial assistance. So members of the public are encouraged to attend and provide input. There's additional information on our webpage, but of course, our meetings are webcast. So there's multiple ways to participate, and I anticipate that being just a really good workshop just to really hear some of the really great projects that have occurred around the state, and just really, I'm going to call it information sharing, so that we can learn from others and just really start moving some stormwater capture projects forward. Another update is the SGMA update, and so this is regarding the Tulare Lake groundwater subbasin. On Wednesday, November 29th, the California 5th District Court of Appeal issued two largely favorable opinions addressing the board's appeal of preliminary court orders in the Kings County Farm Bureau versus State Water Resources Control Board case. In that case, Kings County Farm Bureau challenges the board's designation of the Tulare Lake subbasin as probationary under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, also known as SGMA. A preliminary injunction from September 13, 2024, from the Kings County Superior Court had barred any actions by the board related to the probationary designation in Tulare Lake subbasin, but did not reverse the probationary designation. The injunction has now been set aside, and State Board staff can resume working with local groundwater managers to resolve issues in the subbasin's groundwater sustainability plans. Staff will also consider next steps in moving forward with SGMA implementation in the subbasin. So our staff have they're starting to reach out, starting to work with the subbasin and see how we can move things forward. With that, are there any questions?
this may be a little unfair. I don't mean, mean it to be, but I read in Maven that the subsidence in the State Water Project is such that it may result in a 28.5% reduction of water delivery to the south. Obviously, we're in the south. So I wondered, like, do you know exactly when they're expecting that? If the state has any plans to look at repair of that and how they go about it, and would it be phased in? Is the subsidence all in one area or a number of areas?
And so so there are some ongoing repairs occurring to the project. And so that is occurring with it regarding subsidence in Sigma. That is one area that Division of Water Resources and the State Board look at to make sure that not only the work that is occurring now to fix the subsidence that has historically occurred, but also to take a look at ongoing subsidence to make sure that we do not have ongoing impacts to the canal. And so that is one of the things that is looked at is major infrastructure and working with the different subbasins to make sure that infrastructure is protected and that it is not going to be further impacted. And so the 28, what you may have heard would be I did not read the same article, so I'm not really sure exactly the exact words, but it is something that is something that is taken into account. And if that was something that was projected, it would be something that we would be working with that GSA to say, this is not an acceptable range of impacts. And we would be working with them to make sure that did not occur.
Because 25% decrease, we already have about a 50% increase. So that starts to add up. My second question was, and again, it's oblique to what you just mentioned to us, but about resource management and local capture and use of stormwater. So there are some differences in water rights there. And I'm trying to understand them. They seem, I don't know, they seem like it's temporary. And what happens if the overland is under riparian rights? Is that only the surface water? Does it count for surface water? That's
you're correct. There are some differences, and it is surface water. And so they are, there's 1-year permits. We urge everyone to come in for a 5-year permit, which is longer. And so it really is how someone, an applicant is coming in for their permit, for their diversion, I'm going to call it. And so we really urge everyone to come in for a 5-year, which is, slightly longer than 1 year. And so we're working on some permit. I say we're working on some permit streamlining, but Water Rights did that a couple of years ago. They worked on streamlining it. It still does take a little bit of time, but they did work on streamlining to make sure that we do have different permit alternatives to, especially for stormwater capture.
okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for coming down and addressing us this morning.
Yes, thank you. Please reach out anytime with any questions.
Next up is comments or information from my fellow board members. Does anybody like to pass anything along this morning? Anything interesting you've been involved with? No? Okay. Then we move on to our executive officer. I'm sure you have a few things for us this morning. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Strawn and members of the board. I'll ask first if there are any questions on the written executive officer's report. A couple, thank you.
Who's first? Okay. I don't have questions, but I want to lift up something that I think is really important and worth celebrating. And then I have another issue in addition to that. But the San Diego Foundation has awarded $650,000 of grants through its 2025 Binational Resilient Initiative. And they've funded 6 projects that are all very impressive and very worth it. And I'm just really happy that we have the San Diego Foundation here to assist with these transboundary flows, and they're able to work both in Mexico and United States with in just a lot of coordination between the two. And I think that's something that should really be celebrated. And my other point is less of a celebratory question, and that is our budget. So particularly our fees. So I remember, and this is not a new dynamic, that when the state government contracts and all the departments need to make some cuts, they implement those cuts across the board, regardless if you're fee-based and not reliant on the general fund, or if you are reliant on the general fund. Now, of course, everybody understands that if the general fund is suffering, everybody needs to tighten their belt and cut back. And that's not a move that we're unfamiliar with. However, in the case of the water boards, where most of their revenue stream is in fact fee-based, so people pay for a service, pay for a permit, our revenue stream is not affected when the state of California experiences a cutback. But nevertheless, the imposition is put on us along with everybody else just for the sake of equality, I guess. But one of the things that requires when that happens is that we change our fee structure. And I saw that they have announced a 2.5% reduction in the permit fees, I guess, to align the revenue stream with this cutback. Is that what it is all about?
That is my understanding.
So this comes at a time where science gives us increasing information to realize that our function, our responsibility to provide clean water and protect the environment for people and fauna and animals comes at a time that we know our responsibilities are increasing. So it's really difficult for me to celebrate a reduction in what will require, which would result in less resources for us to work with at a time where we actually need more resources, and we have permittees who understand the value of permits that are smart and timely and informative and enforceable and make sense to them. When we take resources away from that process, it does not result in better, smarter permits, I am sorry to say. So I'm not celebrating that.
No, I would agree. I will add to that over the last 18 months, we were forced to keep about a 20% vacancy rate among our staff, which slowed down a number of key priorities, including the stormwater permit, the basin planning projects, tribal beneficial uses, and others. I've also had to borrow staff from those programs to manage the border issues. So those have been at a cost to us. I will add, I am working on a report right now and doing some fact checking and some process and control checking. But I want to also report that part of that 2% reduction is to return funds that used to provide surface water ambient monitoring program funds. This is a grievous loss, frankly, to the regions. A regional water quality control board should be able to ask questions about ambient water quality that are not discharge related. And we use that program, as you saw in the report this month, for tribal communities and environmental justice or underserved communities consumption evaluation. So it's really unfortunate we lost that program. It doesn't even amount to a rounding error, but it is one of the reasons that the state is returning funds on the fees that paid for SWAMP. We're looking at ways to creatively manage our resources such as they remain, because a lot of our contracts were also swept, to try to fill that gap where we can. And as always, we're working with SCWRP and other academia to try to fill that through research dollars. But it is really an unfortunate loss, Member Cantu, and you've identified one of the key ways that it's actually affecting us. So you'll see a more detailed report in December after I've been able to check a few things and make sure that I'm not speaking out of turn, which I may very well have. But these are decisions that have been announced.
In the last 25 years that I have been tracking these things, there have been no less than 3, and I'm probably missing some, third-party private sector reviews to look at the resource needs of the water boards. And in every case, they announce after their analysis that we're under-resourced for anywhere from 25 to 55% of the resources that we need. So they've been working on a shoestring forever, and there is no more fat to be cut back. So when I read that revenue stream that people are willing to pay, that is not general fund based, is cut, it just really find that upsetting.
And Dr. Olson.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to lead off, given the upcoming rains that we're going to have in this area. And so it led to one question, whether gate 1, is it operable and fixed in order to be able to protect the wastewater plant?
The short answer is they have a bypass ongoing right now as they're installing the new junction box 1. So they have capacity up to 60 million gallons per day with the pumps that they've set up. Excess flows that may flood PB1 will be diverted to Stewart's Drain during a storm event. We're waiting to see how bad this will be. It looks as though it'll be 3/4 of an inch to an inch. It may come down all in a few hours, or it may be stretched out. And of course, they tend to be spotty. The Tijuana River always seems to get the worst of it, but IBWC is prepared, and as is SELA, and operating their pump station to try to ensure the protection of the plant.
What was the maintenance that they shut down for in October?
They put in the international collector, and they're also doing repairs on Pump Station 1 in Mexico, where the wastewater flows are pumped over the hill to San Antonio de los Buenos.
All right. So are those completed now? Are they ongoing? Will
They
they
are.
have an impact as we look now?
They are ongoing. They were also evaluating suspect flows in the old international collector, trying to see if there were other illicit connections that they hadn't accounted for. They've had some very black, very dense flows of wastewater into the plant and at PB SELA that they were trying to identify and control the source of. So for right now, junction box 1 is the new junction box 1 is being installed, and they have a working bypass around it that will handle the 35 million gallons per day daily flows and up to 60 million gallons per day per hour for a short period of time. They can put water in the flow equalization basins to keep from discharging or bypassing treatment for most storm events. That should be adequate for this one.
Then my last question, I think I wrote it to you also in an email, is on, I noticed that the beach area is open from sort of where the houses start in Imperial Beach north. But south of that point, it's still closed. And I know it appears to be wetland areas. So is it closed because it's wetland areas? Is it closed because the water quality still is not meeting standards, or what's the exact issue?
Yeah, it's closed, Dr. Olson, because we still have Tijuana River flows. In fact, it spiked last night, about 30 million gallons per day, as PB SELA was taken offline for repairs for Pump Station 1 in the JB1 bypass. We still have daily flows that have been persistent between 3 million and 10 million gallons per day, and that's causing a significant impact on the coastal beaches there, just north of the Tijuana River. We also have flows from San Antonio de los Buenos that are not treated, that are bypassed the treatment plant. They get about 45 million gallons per day pumped to the area. Only 18 million gallons can be treated. The rest are discharged untreated on the shoreline. The UC San Diego Scripps Institution of Oceanography has their pathogen forecast modeling real time and 5 days in advance. And you can see the plumes coming off of those two sources making their way up the Coronado Bight. And as we always suspected, slopping over into San Diego Bay. They have nonetheless improved somewhat, and it's too early to be optimistic, especially with the raining season starting. But the increased flow to the treatment plant has resulted in reduced flows in the river, not by a lot, but some. And I think we're just approaching a tipping point now on beach closures. We actually had a 24-hour period in October where all the beaches were open down to Borderfield State Park. It only lasted a day, but it was a day. And I think we'll see more and more episodic postings and depostings as we get improvement on the flows. But the next few months with rain, we're going to see consistent closures. But it's those two sources, San Antonio and the Tijuana River.
Okay, thank you. Then I had another question on the report which referred to, and you'll have to forgive my ignorance, blue-green infrastructure.
Yes.
I need to know what that there wasn't a definition that I saw.
There
I'm
isn't.
a little ignorant on that.
I always think algae, but it's not.
No, I
What
know,
what
I
it
got
is
that.
it's retrofitting existing communities in the Choyas Creek watershed to include infiltration, community park space, the green components, regreening parts of Choyas Creek, adding flood control capacity, improving the neighborhoods in terms of their ability to manage stormwater runoff. The city of San Diego and the regional board have been partners with Groundworks Choice on this. Several of our board members, including Chair Strawn and Celeste Cantu and Stephanie Warren, have attended the public meetings. They have funding to do a plan, and the city of San Diego is working on several compatible projects that would be blue water and green infrastructure that would try to improve the conditions in a rather older watershed that was built out over 100 years ago, and that still contains channels like Choyas Creek that are considerably undersized to what the current flow demands are on a rainy day. No one anticipated a developed watershed and the runoff increase 100 years ago when the communities were planned and the creek was narrowed. So that is what it is. Several of our staff, including Melissa Corona, have been active in the organization, and we continue to support it as part of our stormwater approach to controlling sources and improving management of flows along the way.
It looked like it had good public support.
Very
From
large
the
public
report.
support.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's excellent. My last comment or question goes to agricultural lands. I've noticed that both in this report and the one from last month, there's been a lot of activity in different areas. I wondered but I didn't see anywhere about regenerative farming. Is that being looked at in this area? Is it not productive in this area? Because it seems to reduce water use by 35% in the Imperial Valley, which is impressive, but I didn't know if it transferred to other places in the state.
I genuinely don't know if any of our local growers are pursuing that approach. We can certainly look into it with them and report back next month.
Okay, great. I'd really appreciate that. And just want to say all the progress that's been made in that area. How are we doing on enrollments?
Again, I'll have to get back to you.
Okay.
We had at least 2 groups fall out during the last cycle with the waste discharge requirements. We have 2 active groups now, the San Diego Farm Bureau and Santa Margarita Irrigated Lands Group. I believe we were close to reaching the majority of real growers that were operating in those areas. The numbers were often inflated for advertising purposes, but we had over 2,500 enrollees, and that represented the majority of them. So I can report back to more details on what the status of those enrollments are going forward.
I just ask if we have any serious upsets with our international border wastewater treatment plant during the storm period. Can you just send out a little note to the board
Certainly.
to let us know?
I will do that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Moving on to the rest of the report, if I could, Mr. Chair Strawn.
Just if there's no other questions, I had just one, and changed the topic back to Calurpa.
Yes.
Reading through this, I mean, it sounds like it's basically good news at this point. But the part where they're looking for some additional funding to continue to search outside that central area. It wasn't clear to me what sources that they would expect to get that funding from. Is it a mix of state and federal, or?
I believe it's a mix of state, federal, and local.
Okay,
U.S. Fish and Wildlife contributed funds, which I'm not sure what the status is. If they were fully expended, the port also fronted money as did the cleanup and abatement account.
okay, all right, thank you.
So a couple of things to announce. Happily, we can welcome a new staff person. I don't know that she's here today, but we'll introduce her in December if she isn't. Alyssa Santillan is now going to be joining our stormwater unit as a water resource control engineer. And as I reported previously, 2 of our longtime staff, Christopher Means, environmental scientist, and Cynthia Gorham, and senior environmental scientists, have retired. And very unhappily, I have to report that my assistant executive officer, Kelly Dorsey, has also filed for retirement. Congratulations to her and for her many, many years of service. We have a good write-up on what she has done. Among other things, in this room, she signed the closure order for Mission Valley Terminals, which was more than a 20-year-long cleanup case and a successful cleanup case. And we can see it across the way now with the construction of the Snapdragon Arena and the development of that property for San Diego State University. It was a significant and singular accomplishment. So we're very grateful for her many years of service and her contributions. She leaves us in a very good place. Her last effective date will be December 19th. Her last official date will be December 31st. And the job announcement is out to fill the vacancy, not fill her shoes. Can't do. The filing date is December 8th on that. I have the assistance of several colleagues in the recruitment process and state board. So we will move forward on that as quickly as possible. The earliest possible date for a new assistant executive officer to start would be December 5th or January 5th, more likely to be January 12th. Like we will see some delays with the holiday season in Sacramento. I will also report that I spoke at the Assembly Select Committee on Sea Level Rise in October, gave a presentation on the regional board's perspective, our practical vision, the resolution that the board's adopted, and how we're working to address the issues with the sea level rise, particularly with wetlands protection. And on December 11th, I understand that I will be asked to speak at a Senate Environmental Quality Committee on border issues. I believe that that hearing will be local in San Diego. And on December 4th, I'll be attending as a director, the Southern California Wetlands Recovery Project annual meeting in Orange County, and then the Southern California Coastal Water Research Project Commission meeting the following day, also in Orange County. And I will segue to item number 3, unless there are other questions on the EO report. And board member 2, I did see your hand rise a couple times.
Yeah, everybody have pretty much asked what I needed to ask.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I do want to compliment the outreach effort at UCSD. I think that's very proactive, and I want to compliment.
Thank you. I'll pass that on. I can report that the International Treatment Plant is now finally at the 35 million gallons per day with the bypass that I mentioned earlier. So far, they're holding good on their effluent quality. The introduction of ferrochloride to the primary treatment system seems to be having a very good effect in keeping the effluent within the limits that the board adopted in the cease and desist order. The JB1 bypass is underway, as I mentioned. They had some difficulty locating pumps adequate in capacity to serve that, but they did finally find them from Mexico to install. The ozonation project that the commission tried in the Tijuana River is I believe, effectively concluded. Unfortunately, it was washed away during the most recent storm. The good news is that the trash boom, which was just installed downstream of it, captured most of Greenwater's debris. They only lost one trailer downstream in the bypass area that Customs and Border Protection maintains open. So compliments from the commissioner to the RCAC, the regional board, and others for operating that trash boom very effectively. Worked. So all the hoses and tubes and pipes that the contractor lost were declared waste, and they were able to remove those. There was a fuel spill. It was over-reported as 1,000 gallons of diesel. It was actually less than 5 gallons. There was a secondary containment within the trailer, and it wasn't full at the time it was tipped by the flows. So we have a report on that, and we're following up. That contractor has pulled out. We don't expect to see it return. The trash boom, as I said, was successful, and it's deployed. They've added gravity anchors to it, so we'll see how it performs now under heavier storm events. This one may give them a good test. PB Sela is intermittently offline during repairs and inspections of Pump Station 1, as I mentioned, and the bypass of JB1 in order to protect Pump Station 1. So we will see higher flows in the Tijuana River today. Yesterday, there were 30 million gallons. We expect to see similar volumes, and it will increase as the rains arrive tomorrow. The Water Board has been working with the San Diego River Conservancy on funding that they provided for a Tijuana River Watershed Action Plan. I plan to either have an update for you or a report in December on that. It was funded for $175,000 by the San Diego River Conservancy, and Craft Water is working on that with Minute 320 representatives from the US and Mexico. It'll be a short, glossy summary of the projects approved by the Binational Core Group last year as a prospectus, if you will, for funding requests for projects. Some of those projects actually may have been now funded by the San Diego Foundation. And then Prop 4, we provided on behalf of the recovery team a recommended list of potential projects for the state board to consider as it goes through its encumbrance process for the funds. There is a need, I think, for rulemaking that the state board will have to do and guidelines for a more competitive approach. So each of those parties may have to submit separate competitive proposals for the funding. But our list was about $46 million of projects costs, with a larger amount of match from local agencies like the County of San Diego and state parks. Then, of course, I also submitted the cleanup and abatement account request for $1.4 million to do sediment quality objective assessment in the Tijuana River estuary. The state board is considering that request right now. It would require a vote by the state board to approve it. That's all that I have to report this month, unless there are any questions. That concludes the EO report and item 3. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is our consent calendar. But before calling for a vote on that consent calendar, I'd like to ask our staff for a briefing on items 5 and 6. This does not constitute a request to remove them from the consent calendar, but the East County Advanced Treatment Project is huge. It's a huge step forward, and I think it's in the news a lot, and it's worth taking some time out this morning to hear about it. And when that's done, then we will go ahead and call for a vote on the consent calendar. Please go ahead.
Hello, Board Chair Strawn and fellow members of the board and members of the public. My name is Brandon Bushnell. I'm a water resource control engineer working in the Water Sustainability and Protection Unit here at the San Diego Water Board. I'll be presenting on items 5 and 6, which is East County's Advanced Water Purification Project. I'll be joined by some representatives of the East County JPA to voice their support, and I will request that you hold your questions till the end. Here's a brief overview of my presentation. I will start by introducing item 5 and the concept of indirect potable reuse, or IPR for short. I'll then introduce item 6 and give a brief project overview before delving into the permitting specifics for this project. I will then wrap up by making a staff recommendation and answering any questions from members of the board or the public. And as I said, there will be a member of the JPA to voice their support. As I mentioned, I'll be presenting on 2 orders, so I want to start by differentiating between the 2 items. Item 5 is consideration of tentative order R9-2025-003, which also serves as a National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES permit. It establishes requirements for allowing the use of advanced treated recycled water to augment Helix Water District's Lake Jennings, which is an important regional source of domestic drinking water. This tentative order will also permit the discharge of advanced treated recycled water to Santee Lakes, which are non-contact recreational water bodies that overflow into Sycamore Creek. Both Lake Jennings and Sycamore Creek are considered waters of the United States and thus fall under our NPDES program. Therefore, this tentative order is both an NPDES permit and waste discharge requirements order. For simplicity, I will refer to this tentative order as the NPDES permit from here on out. Fun fact, this will be the second NPDES permit issued in the state of California for a surface water augmentation potable reuse project. The other one being Pure Water San Diego, which we all know is also here in our region. Now, indirect potable reuse, or IPR, is a process where advanced treated recycled water is used to supplement drinking water supplies. Once treated, it is introduced into an environmental buffer, such as a surface water body or a groundwater aquifer, before being extracted again for potable use. Thus, these projects fall into 2 categories: groundwater replenishment and surface water augmentation. Groundwater replenishment, as the name infers, involves recharging an aquifer with advanced treated water, which is then extracted and treated again at a drinking water treatment plant. While surface water augmentation takes advanced treated water and puts it into a lake or reservoir. This is then extracted by a drinking water treatment plant and treated again. The diagram on the screen illustrates both examples of IPR projects, and the project we'll be discussing today has a surface water augmentation component, as I previously mentioned. Now, item 6 is the consideration of tentative order R9-2025-006, which establishes requirements for the treatment and disinfection of domestic wastewater to produce non-potable recycled water at the new East County Water Recycling Facility. Since the non-potable recycled water will be discharged to land and not surface water, it falls under our waste discharge requirements, or WDR program, and does not require an NPDES permit. Thus, I'll refer to this as the tentative WDR order. On the left side of the screen here, you can see the original water recycling facility in Santee circa 1968, before it was renamed the Ray Stoyer Water Recycling Facility around 2011. On the right is the new East County Water Recycling Facility under construction, as it has replaced the Ray Stoyer facility. The Joint Powers Authority will own and operate the facilities that make up the large recycled water project. The member agencies of the Joint Powers Authority are Padre Dam Municipal Water District, the City of El Cajon, and the County of San Diego. Padre Dam currently diverts up to 2 million gallons per day of East County wastewater flows to the Ray Stoyer Water Recycling Facility. Tertiary treated effluent from the Ray Stoyer facility is discharged to Santee Lakes and provided to Padre Dam's non-potable recycled water customers. The Ray Stoyer facility has been taken out of service and replaced with the new 16 million gallon per day East County Water Recycling Facility, as shown on the previous slide. 14 million gallons per day of the tertiary treated wastewater will be sent to the new advanced water purification facility, and approximately 2 million gallons per day will supply the non-potable recycled water system. The new advanced water purification facility will augment Lake Jennings, which serves as the drinking water supply for Helix Water District. The advanced treated recycled water will also be used to maintain water levels in Santee Lakes, which are a part of a recreational area owned and operated by Padre Dam. One of those 7 lakes discharges to Sycamore Creek, which is a tributary to the San Diego River. Now, the diagram on the screen shows the treatment process at the new East County Water Recycling Facility, as well as the solids handling facilities. Those, in order of flow, are screening and grit removal units, primary clarifiers, flow equalization and bioreactors, secondary clarifiers, granular media filters, and after the filters, a small portion of the water will be diverted to the existing chlorine contact basins from the Ray Stoyer facility, which will continue to be used to disinfect and produce non-potable recycled water. During normal operation, most of the effluent produced from the new recycling facility will serve as a source for the new purification facility, as mentioned on the previous slide. The new solids handling facility, as shown in the diagram, includes rotary drum for sludge thickening, anaerobic digesters, centrifuge for dewatering, as well as storage and load-out facilities and biogas handling. The solids produced at the facility will either be beneficially used outside of the state of California or disposed at a appropriately permitted landfill. Now, this diagram on the screen shows the treatment process at the East County Advanced Water Purification Facility, as well as Santee Lakes, Sycamore Creek, Lake Jennings, and the RM Levy Water Treatment Plant. The treatment processes for the purification facilities includes membrane filtration, reverse osmosis, ultraviolet light, advanced oxidation, and post-stabilization. The post-stabilization treatment ensures that the advanced treated recycled water maintains a stable and less reactive pH. After post-stabilization, the purified water destined for Lake Jennings will be chlorinated to ensure a free chlorine residual is maintained in the pipeline leading to the reservoir. Lastly, the water will be dechlorinated prior to discharge to the lake to protect aquatic life. A small portion of advanced treated water will be used to maintain the levels in Santee Lakes, which occasionally overflow to Sycamore Creek. This map shows the various large infrastructure projects, such as the new treatment facilities I just mentioned, as well as a few other key pipelines and other auxiliary facilities that were necessary to complete this project. The project will include both the new treatment facilities, the solids handling facility, dechlorination facility adjacent to Lake Jennings, conveyance facilities for waste streams, and advanced treated recycled water. The wastewater treatment facilities are located in Santee, while Lake Jennings is in neighboring Lakeside. One important piece of infrastructure I'd like to point out is the East County Residuals line, which will divert brine and centrate from the new facilities to the City of San Diego's Metro sewer system. The brine discharge to the Metro sewer system will be conveyed to the Point Loma wastewater treatment plant, bypassing the City of San Diego's North City Water Reclamation Plant and their pure water facility. Now here is a very complicated slide illustrating the various waste and recycled water streams and how we propose to regulate them all. The arrows are color coordinated to indicate which order the waste or recycled water stream will be regulated under. After discussing the project and permitting options with the East County JPA, they elected to have separate waste discharge requirements issued for the production of non-potable recycled water rather than folding that into the discharge permit, NPDES permit. Thus, the two orders the board is considering today. The NPDES permit, which is represented by the pink arrows on the screen, and the WDR order, which is represented by the one blue arrow on the screen. The distribution and use of non-potable recycled water from the East County Water Recycling Facility will be administered by Padre Dam using their existing purple pipe distribution system. And this is represented by the purple arrows on the screen. The distribution and use of non-potable recycled water will be regulated under Padre Dam's enrollment in the statewide general water reclamation requirements for recycled water use. This will allow us to assign the purveyance and use requirements to Padre Dam specifically, rather than assigning them to the JPA as a whole. Lastly, the discharge of RO, brine, and centrate to the City of San Diego's Metro sewer system does not require additional permits, as those would be covered under the City of San Diego's NPDES permit for discharges at the Point Loma Ocean outfall. To reiterate, those discharges will be routed past the City of San Diego's potable reuse project to not negatively impact the source water for that project. The NPDES permit includes effluent limitations based on maximum contaminant levels for drinking water for the protection of human health and limitations for nutrients based on water quality objectives specified in the San Diego Water Board's Basin Plan. The nutrient limits are to prevent excess algal growth and adverse impacts to aquatic life in the receiving waters. The NPDES permit also includes operation, treatment, and design requirements, as well as influent, interior, effluent, and receiving water monitoring to ensure compliance with the permit's requirements. If adopted, the NPDES permit also rescinds order number R9 2022-003, which was the latest iteration of the NPDES permit issued to Padre Dam for the discharge from the Ray Storer facility to Santee Lakes and Sycamore Creek. Lastly, there's a significant number of requirements for IPR projects specified in the California Water Code Title 22 to ensure the protection of public health. The discharger submitted an engineering report for the project to the Division of Drinking Water, or DDW, in accordance with the Title 22 requirements. DDW staff reviewed the engineering report to ensure the project complies with applicable requirements and issued a letter with listed recommendations to incorporate in the regional board's permit for this project. I'd like to take some time to discuss some of these Title 22 requirements. Listed on the screen are the main sections of the Title 22 regulations governing indirect potable reuse projects. I will highlight a few and elaborate on what they cover. Advanced treatment criteria lays out the type of treatment system components that are required for IPR projects. This means starting with at least secondary treated wastewater and then using membrane filtration, reverse osmosis, and ultraviolet advanced oxidation. This project will start with tertiary treated wastewater, followed by the required treatment train. The regulated contaminants and physical characteristics control lists the various primary, secondary, and maximum contaminant levels established for drinking water that the advanced treated water needs to comply with. Thus, these have been incorporated as effluent limitations for the project. Another important section is the pathogenic microorganism control, which sets the required reductions in various pathogenic organisms, such as viruses and bacteria. Now moving on to the tentative WDR order. The tentative WDR order establishes requirements for the treatment of domestic wastewater and the production of non-potable recycled water at the new recycling facility. Some of these key requirements of the tentative WDR order include effluent limitations based on secondary wastewater treatment standards and groundwater quality objectives in the San Diego Water Board's Basin Plan. The WDR also includes operation, treatment, maintenance, and monitoring and reporting requirements based in part on Title 22 and recommendations from the Division of Drinking Water for the protection of public health. If adopted, the tentative WDR rescinds order number 97-49, which was the latest iteration of the WDR issued to Padre Dam for the production and use of non-potable recycled water. As previously mentioned, the distribution of recycled water by Padre Dam for non-potable purposes will be regulated separately under the statewide general water reclamation requirements order. Recycled water distributed by Padre Dam will be used primarily at landscape irrigation sites and construction sites. Now I'll go through the public comment periods for both the NPDES permit and WDR order. Starting with the NPDES permit. On July 31st, the board staff notified discharger and known interested parties of the tentative NPDES permit, as well as posted it on the board's website. The public comment period closed on September 1st, 2025. Staff received one comment letter from the discharger during the 30-day comment period. The comments requested board staff correct some typographical errors, ensure consistency throughout the permit, and asked that parts of the permit be reorganized to improve clarity. Additionally, the JPA asked that the monitoring reporting program be modified to reduce some receiving water monitoring frequencies and move locations of compliance sampling for certain nutrients. Staff also received 2 comment emails after the close of the 30-day comment period from the discharger and their consultant, which staff chose to accept into the record. A response to comments report was prepared, and it contains all the responses to all the comments received. The report also describes all the substantive changes made to the NPDES permit and gives staff's reasoning for not making a small number of requested changes. Lastly, staff drafted a revised tentative NPDES permit, and it displays the edits in red line strikeout format, and it is supporting document number 1 to the agenda package for item number 5. Now moving on to the comments on the tentative WDR order. Board staff also posted this tentative WDR order on July 31st, and the public comment period closed on September 1st. San Diego Water Board staff received one comment letter from the discharger during the 30-day comment period, which requested moving compliance monitoring for effluent flow rate and adding a footnote to a table to clarify that compliance monitoring location for 2 parameters. San Diego Water Board staff agreed with the discharger's request and revised the tentative WDR order accordingly. Staff did not prepare a response to comments report for this tentative order, as all the requested changes were made. There was a revised tentative order prepared, which displays the changes in red line strikeout format, and that is also supporting document number 1 to agenda package item number 6. Both tentative orders are consistent with the Strategize to Achieve Resilient Local Water Supply chapter of the San Diego Water Board's practical vision, as it establishes requirements for the production of recycled water and the use of sustainable local water supplies such as recycled water, helps reduce the San Diego region's dependence on imported water and increases the reliability of water supplies locally. The NPDES permit is also consistent with the mission of the Strategy for Healthy Waters chapter of the practical vision, as it integrates all applicable technology-based requirements, water quality-based effluent limitations, and receiving water quality standards to protect the water quality and beneficial uses of Lake Jennings. Lastly, I wanted to show some satellite imagery of the project site from November 2018 to March of 2025. As you can see, significant progress has been made, and this ambitious project is nearing completion. Staff recommends the board adopt both the NPDES permit and WDR order for this project. And I will now introduce Kyle Swanson, General Manager of Padre Dam, as he would like to voice his support for these items.
Good morning, Kyle.
Thank you, Brandon. Good morning, board. Kyle Swanson, CEO and General Manager for Padre Dam Municipal Water District. I'm here representing the East County Advanced Water Purification Project, as Padre Dam is the administrator and operator for that entity. First and foremost, I want to thank the board for your consideration of this permit and staff's support and efforts made over the many years in the development of this project. It is a significant milestone to be here today for the ask and request of approval for this permit or permits. And I want to note and probably put a little bit of an exclamation point on some of the comments that Brandon made about the overall wins for the East County community when this project comes online. Namely, that this reduces the dependence on Colorado River water. As you guys are mostly aware, that the San Diego region imports the majority of its water into San Diego. The Colorado River has been impacted, and it's a challenging situation. And this project provides a new drought-proof, reliable water supply right in East San Diego County. It also reduces the discharge of wastewater, treated wastewater, out into the Pacific Ocean. I think a significant win from an environmental standpoint. And it provides a new opportunity for business growth and development in our East County community. I want to also recognize this is just an example of great governance, working with our partners on the project, Helix Water District, who own and operate Lake Jennings, which will be the receiving surface water body for this purified water. And also our consultants, so staff and Helix and our consultants who have spent tirelessly hours supporting the development of this project, the construction of this project, and the forward movement of it. So again, I want to just thank you for your time and for your consideration of approving these permits for the project, and look forward to seeing this as a significant win for the East County community. Lastly, I'll say, as Brandon noted, this stands as, the potentially the second permit in the state of California utilizing surface water augmentation. That standing, we hope to be the first project online operating and utilizing this permit. So if we can edge out the city of San Diego, that's kind of a little bit of a goal for us. But again, thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions or incorporate other staff with those questions.
I just have two questions.
Yeah.
First of all, congratulations. This is a huge undertaking and you've been at it for a long time. My question is, what's the TDS of the water delivered to Lake Jennings, and what is the per acre foot cost?
Okay. TDS, I might have to go to staff. Saval, do you know that?
We record this and we
Sure,
didn't get
sure.
recording.
Hello, this is Seva Sen with Padre Dam. I'm the AWP engineering manager and leading our permitting effort with our great consultants' input. So it's around 100 milligram per liter after stabilization going into Lake Jennings.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
And then
Yeah. Jump in. But what she said.
I'm sorry, can I just get it in milligrams per liter as it's delivered to the lake?
100 milligrams per liter.
100 milligrams per liter. And what is it originally from the wastewater?
Do you know? 970? So influent, I guess, sounds like it's around 970 milligrams per liter.
And your rejection rate?
Rejection rate is like 95% is what we're looking for.
No, the rejection rate of the salt. I'm sorry. I should have said that. The water loss during ROing and treating the water. And then, I'm sorry, Celeste.
Yeah, the rejection rate is 95% through the reverse osmosis process. So 5% loss is
You
the
have
rejection.
5% brine.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Okay, great. Thank you.
And the cost?
Second question. Yeah, the cost. We're going through a cost of service study currently. So initially the project moved forward looking at a financial pro forma model. And the comparison of the costs was what drove the project forward, which is the cost of producing the purified water versus importing water, the cost of treating the wastewater versus sending the wastewater to be treated by the city of San Diego. So those costs, we believe, are less than the alternatives. So it was better to do the project. We'll have lower wastewater treatment costs, and our the production of the purified water will be less than imported water costs. I will know the actual costs here in the next 2 months as we wrap up the cost of service in the beginning of next year. And we still believe that it'll be competitive with imported water costs and significantly less than desalination costs,
Ocean desal.
ocean desal.
Okay, thank you. Look forward to that number.
Yeah.
That's a good segue into my question. Can we go back to your presentation and the slide that you identified as particularly busy?
Yeah. Vinci, can you pull up the presentation?
I'm just not sure how to ask it without the slide. Sorry.
Yeah. You're with all the arrows and
Okay.
permits. Oh,
Yeah.
there we go.
Yes, that's fine. So for the red arrow,
Yeah.
who pays for the cost? Like, who ultimately pays to treat the concentrate that's being placed into the city of San Diego Metro Sewer?
I can answer that. That'll be the 3 JPA agencies. So
Okay.
that cost will get split up proportionally based on the amount of influence they have or providing to the project.
Okay, thanks.
Follow up with that question. The concentrated, I noticed that in your graph that it has to be a separate pipeline to discharge that because you don't want to affect the city of San Diego's pure water.
Correct. Yeah, that was a.
Does it go all the way to Point Loma? or-
No, what it does is it was a developed approach with the city of San Diego, who is partner on that component of the project. We call that package 4, and that was to divert it around the intake of their feed to pure water. It goes into a southern Mission Valley interceptor that is a bypass of their marina pump station, essentially.
Yeah, sorry, follow up. How concentrated is that? I mean, I know that normally sewage, it's about 90% is water. How concentrated is that?
I'm gonna have to ask the team on this, and do we know how concentrated that is?
Yeah, so we are discharging 2 residuals into that line. One is from the solids handling facility. So that's very small amount of water, and it mainly has nitrogen and solids in it. But by the time it's mixed with the brine, it's basically water. But mainly from the brine, we are like the concern water quality will be the TDS, and that will be about 20,000 milligram per liter. So that's less than seawater salinity.
So I sort of look at these projects in 2 ways. One is meeting the drinking water standards, which of course, but also as you discharge water into a body of water or you sink it into the ground, it could have impact on the flora and fauna in that area and change it. So I wanted to know in terms of, I imagine everybody has PFOS and PFOA and all those compounds, and you do have a certain amount that is used for recycled water and doesn't go, so does it go in, so the only water that goes into the lake, if I understand appropriately, is only water that's been treated with RO and therefore remove those chemicals?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Mhm.
All right. So is there any evaluation on the Lake Jennings or the Santee Lakes about the quality that's coming out? I mean, do you have to adjust the carbon in the water, or are there other factors like that you consider?
Yeah, I mean, the permit will drive us to comply with all permit requirements. There was a significant period of testing during the operation of a demonstration facility where we tested the discharge of that water going through a mock example of the project into one of Padre Dam's ponds. It was essentially Pond B. We ran that for, gosh, it might have been 18 months or so. It was a significant amount of time and looked at any impacts. So there were studies done and it was conclusive that there was no negative impacts to the
Okay.
flora and fauna.
So you did that with a model. Did you also do monitoring at this, or was it all model?
No, that was,
Just
no, that was
monitoring.
all
That was a
actual
test, an
discharging
actual
of water
test
and
chase.
yeah, testing. Yes.
All right, then I wanted to ask, what was your TOC concentration in the water before it was treated? So the influent to your RO treatment.
Okay. Another great question for the team.
Effluent from what? From your wastewater treatment plant tertiary? Is that what you're saying? Your tertiary is at 7? Okay. And so coming out of the plant, the TOC was what? It would be all soluble, I would guess, but
Well, that's what you were saying. The effluent was 6 to 7, right? Rob?
after RO.
Out of Stoyer.
Facility that we put in the Pond B.
Yeah.
I don't recall that number.
Those are very, so coming out of our advanced water purification facility, TOC will be around 0.1 milligram per liter. And that's
Okay.
pretty kind of monitored, the critical control point for us. It's something that we monitor.
And so what is a TOC in Lake Jennings and the other lake that goes into?
Great question for our partner.
Yeah, so without the advanced water purification going into the reservoir, it mimics that of the imported supply, so it'll range anywhere from 1 up to
It's
the
fair.
maximum of 4.
So it's low,
Yeah.
fairly low. All right, I just had one other question. It's more along the lines of cost. And it's your kilowatt, either your kilowatt cost or your kilowatt hour cost, however you want to give it.
So the energy consumption on the
Yeah, for
project.
sure. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Do you guys know that number on what our kilowatt cost is?
I don't think we developed that, but.
Okay.
It's less than the cost of imported supply.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know that, but I want to know your kilowatt cost because,
Yeah, I don't have the exact.
Yeah.
number off the top of my head.
all right. Okay, so there's a reason why I asked that question. Because it will continue to go up.
Yes.
And then did you get LRP funding for this project?
We did.
You
Well,
did.
yeah.
And so it offset your cost by 400, or did you do the 15-year or the other?
We did 15-year, and so it'll net about $86 to $90 million in savings,
Okay.
incentive money.
Okay, so the importance of that program to this project, I would guess, is immense.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's material to making the project happen.
Yeah, because MWD now is considering how to finance LRP. And so
Yeah.
it's really nice to hear that it did a good job and that this is water that will be used and you are going to reach the amount that you said you were going to reach.
I
So
agree.
it's really kudos all around. I appreciate it, but kilowatt hour cost, I would like to.
Okay, that and actual cost of producing the water.
Yeah, well, this is, it'll be
Yeah.
the same.
Go ahead, Jen.
Okay, I have a math problem. Earlier, you mentioned one of the slides, there's 14 million gallon of water per day will be produced for the advanced water facility. But then in the bottom, you have 11.5 and then a 2% to purple pipe. That add up to 13.5. So I'm wondering what happened to the 0.5.
But, yeah, there would be RO reject water, but it'll also add there's water that goes to Santee Lakes. It's not going to the purple pipe.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Mhm.
That was driving me.
Yeah.
Any more? I got a couple, just comments. I mean, it's my neighborhood.
It is.
The NPDS permit, by your presentation, has changed a little bit from the old one. Does it change the period of discharges? It's still matching the rainy season, the discharge into Sycamore Creek?
Yeah, the only overflows that are anticipated is during the rainy season from precipitation. Typically, they operate it to not have any overflows. They're just trying to maintain the levels in Santee
Right,
Lakes
right.
for
I mean,
recreation.
So, I mean, we sample that every month. volunteers, San Diego River Park Foundation, actually. And you ought to get a picture. Right there where Sycamore Creek comes down and heads under Carlton Oak, there's a great white egret that sits there almost every morning, just, waiting for breakfast. It's a gorgeous picture. And I mean, that's the water being discharged that they're not treating. So it's always cleaner than the rest of the water in the river. So kudos to you. The other comment is pertinent, you talked about the advantages of this. I also sit on the advisory board for Mission Trail Park. And one of the concerns I've had for years is, there's two big sewer pipes that run right through the middle of the park. And of course, right now, they're all concerned about closing access to some of the trailheads and that big black pipe that's running through the middle of the park. And I keep telling them, in particular, to focus on the fact that you're not digging up the road and putting in a new pipe. You're lining an old pipe that if we don't do this, it will fill Mission Trails Park full of sewage. And then to Jens' comment, basically what they're doing, so they're relining this pressure pipe that has always been used for overflow of East County sewage, right? With this project, you're unloading that by some significant percentage, and then they run a small pipe inside of the big one, and that's the brine line. So there's a lot of advantages to Mission Trails Park in particular to do this. I know it's going to be a real pain. Anybody that drives down Mission Gorge Road is not happy with you these days because you're down to one lane, but this has some real benefits besides just your additional source of locally controlled clean water. We're fixing some old infrastructure that's in big need. So I give you congratulations for that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
I just have one other question. I'm sorry. This is to our staff on the water board. So there were at least several questions about two sampling locations.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll have to forgive me. I think one is 001A.
Yeah.
And then the other one has it's something 2A, but I think it has a number or something in front, a letter in front of it or something.
Yeah, so there's several different discharge and monitoring points because of the different discharges going on with the project. There's 1A and 2A, which goes to Lake Jennings, and then 1B and 2B, which would be towards Santee Lakes.
I think these were both A's, as
Yeah.
I recall.
Okay.
Forgive me. And there was some discussion back and forth where the people applying for the permit wanted to change it. Some of them you acquiesced to, some of them you didn't.
Yeah.
I wanted to know what was the difference.
Yeah, certainly. There was a lot of back and forth with the JPA during the permit development. We also had a very long administrative draft period where we discussed monitoring locations and compliance points. There was an effort to consolidate as much compliance monitoring at 1A, which is earlier in the treatment process prior to the split, to limit monitoring costs and the cost of compliance. But there was a lot of back and forth to just figure out exactly if that can be done for every parameter, or if there are certain parameters where we still need to be doing monitoring right before discharge or from overflow point from Santee Lakes to Sycamore Creek. And so in that effort to consolidate that monitoring and make sure that it worked for this particular project, there was a lot of back and forth and kind of moving those and adjusting those. There was even some more comments, I think, as you noted, during the actual comment period, further, clarifying where those monitoring points should be. And then the JPA provided justification for those changes and requests.
Well, my other question was, would you consider this to be a model project?
Yeah, I mean, I think the project has been executed in a very, very diligent manner. The pilot study was, very informative and helped with drafting the permit as well as informing the project. And as Gary was alluding to, there was some smart infrastructure needs that were folded into this project to kind of, maximize that funding. and what they could accomplish. So I would say it's a great project. Yeah, model project's probably an accurate term.
Okay, and then to the permittees, how long did it take you to go from conceptualizing the project or conceptual design to actually being able to, I guess when we give our approval, you can start it and
Yeah. Yeah, I think in a general sense, I would say we've been working very diligently at developing the project for the last decade. You could also argue that it goes back before that in some other prior iterations of looking at originally a groundwater recharge project. And timing was such that the surface water augmentation regulations came out that we could align with those. And so it's been a good decade, I would say, of significant work on the project.
And that time period, how much would you say it added to the cost of the project, just in general terms?
The pandemic added the most to the cost of the project. Supply chain issue drove up, the cost of the project probably 50% from a construction. and material.
Post-epidemic inflation?
Yeah. And during the middle of the pandemic, we actually delayed the approval of final design and the award of construction activities just to try to buy some time to get through some of the challenges in 2022.
Do you think it would be worthwhile if there was efforts made to try and see if there are ways to make these procedural steps that you have to go through more timely, or they're as fast as it could possibly go? Are there any?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always an opportunity to work through a pace where, there's a significant amount of time interchanging between different entities and agencies, right? You're seeing multiple agencies coming together to make this happen. We also established that Joint Powers Authority in 2019, right? So there's all these lifts that happened in the last decade. But I think, the praise should be of the staff that you have here in supporting the project and working through it at a pace. Could it be quicker? Maybe, but there's always a benefit of QA/QC, right? To ensure that this is a win from every lens at looking at it, not only as us as a permittee, but the board and, where these permits are going.
Lessons learned that can be generalized, or everything is going to be site specific?
Well, I guess generalized. I mean, I guess we'd have to dig into the team's thoughts on this for particulars. But
Well, it's important because we're going to have to get a large percentage of our drinking water from these types of projects. And therefore, anything we can do because as time goes on, I mean, I'm finding just normal construction delays make costs of projects really increase.
right.
So.
Yeah. No, great questions.
Okay, thank you.
I could add to that, Betty. We do have a statewide work group for potable reuse projects where we're working through these issues and trying to identify areas where we can streamline the process for project proponents and hopefully make things as consistent as possible.
For both surface water and infiltration? Or-
Yeah, it's potable reuse in general. So we're looking at groundwater and surface water projects, mostly groundwater throughout the state because that's what's been done in other regions, but folding in our experience from surface water projects as well.
So also, what's your thought on coastal basins, which is, you can't use it for drinking water, but they're below 3,000 TDS, so they're still declared drinking water basins, and so they want you to RO it and then put it back in the basin where you have a lot of manganese, iron, TDS. Is that group going to take on that challenge of looking at coastal basins, or are you staying in the Central Valley?
Well, we are coordinating and Division of Drinking Water is a part of that group. Those requirements are specific to the Title 22 requirements for indirect potable reuse. So some of that would have to change in those requirements to allow for maybe an easier pathway for those projects, but there is an alternative path to compliance that's laid out. It's just a little bit timely and takes a lot of effort.
More time consuming?
Yes, to go through that alternative path of compliance for the Title 22 regulations. I I don't know if the projects you're referring to would fall under these. I think it's an indirect potable reuse where you're recharging groundwater. Is that my understanding
Well,
correctly?
that's a lot. I mean, a lot of places live on groundwater and so they want to
Yeah.
supplement. I think Salinas is trying to do that now. There are
Yeah.
not places that are trying to do it and in a lot of those areas, I mean, Salinas is very close to the coast. I don't know how their basins interface, but
Yeah, we do have a groundwater recharge project here in the region in Oceanside that does recharge I would call a subpar aquifer. It's not a high quality basin. And they have run into some unique issues with the Title 22 regulations because those are written envisioning a high quality basin that's already somewhat of drinking water quality. But we've found ways to work through those with working with Division of Drinking Water and modifying monitoring to kind of reflect that those.
do you think there can be, at any point, will there be able to be a recommendation to the state to modify how we approach these debilitated basins? I'll put that quotes.
From
Such a committee as one you're on?
I think it's something for our work group to discuss, certainly. And, I would hope that we have some, pointed comments to direct upwards as a result of that work group to hopefully guide, future projects and future regulations.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bushnell. Bushnell, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you in the committee on DPR as well? Direct potable?
While that work group does touch a little bit on direct potable reuse, that is more handled through the Division of Drinking Water, as there is no discharge to the environment for that type of
Right.
project. You're going directly into a pipeline or distribution
Right.
system unless you're doing, there is some DPRs where it's a small reservoir, so it doesn't quite meet the definition of IPR, in which case they would need an NPDES permit from us. Otherwise, if they're going straight into a distribution system,
They want.
there's no permit from the regional board. It's all handled by Division of Drinking Water. However, we will coordinate with them issuing a wastewater permit to the wastewater treatment plant that produces the source water for said advanced water purification facility.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. I really appreciate taking this time and I think we learned a lot and you get a sense of where we are. We're cautiously optimistic that you're going to go forward with this, what do you call it, a model project. And I'll be
Certainly.
looking forward to the day I get it out of my tap.
Thank you.
Chair, would you like a motion to
First I need to see if there's any comment from the public, either in person or online, that might want to pull anything off of the consent calendar. If not, then yes, I will entertain a motion. Thank you.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to pass the consent items.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Chris, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Cantu,
Aye.
Dr. Olson,
Aye.
Ms. Chu,
Aye.
Ms. Warren.
Aye.
Chair Strong,
Aye.
motion carries.
Excuse me? Yeah. Yes, thank you very much. I think we'll take, we have time. We go ahead and take a quick break right now. What, 5, 6, 7 minutes, something like that. Yeah.
You gotta use your gavel. A lot of things happen when you hit the.
Give me a hammer. The next item is an informational item, number 7, Manzanita Canyon Greening and Canyon Health Project. Eric, would you lead us through this, please?
Yeah, good morning, Chairman Strawn and members of the board. My name is Eric Becker. I'm a senior water resource control engineer with your Wetland and Riparian Protection Unit. Item number 7, as you said, is the Manzanita Canyon Greening and Canyon Health Project. It's a restoration project proposed by San Diego Canyonlands in the Chollas Creek watershed. It's informational item only, and so no staff recommendation will take place. These type of projects are key in meeting both our no net loss policy for wetlands by going after the long-term net gain, which is really difficult, and also consistent with our San Diego Water Board's practical vision, the recover stream wetlands and riparian areas portion of it. So restoration projects are hard in the best of circumstances. They're hard and expensive, but you put that in the urban environment, it's more so. You have the existing infrastructure, you have space issues, flooding issues that you have to take into consideration. But what is less difficult now is the permitting process that we have for restoration projects. Ever since 2022, when the state board adopted the statewide restoration general order, the process is way more expedited, and the fees are a flat fee. They're greatly reduced. So we're encouraging these projects. It's easier for us to permit. So today we have a couple speakers to talk about the project, both the details on their proposed restoration, challenges they've met or are meeting through the process, and also just some ideas on moving path forward to maybe get more of these projects done in the future. So we have Clayton Chudy, he's executive director with the San Diego Canyonlands, and we also have Christina Schaefer, president of Schaefer Ecological Solutions, here to discuss the project. So if you don't have any initial questions for me, I will hand it over to Clayton and Christina.
Thank you, Eric. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the board and to Eric and Dave for making it possible for us to come and talk about our little project with you, which I hope will not end up being little in the long run. We're hoping that this is a pilot that can transform the management of canyons and their many impacts to the region over time. My name is Clayton Chudy. I'm an environmental biologist and the executive director of San Diego Canyonlands. And joining me today, our technical expert who will be leading most of this presentation, Christina Schaefer, who is the biological and permitting consultant for this project, as well as 2 of our colleagues from the Stormwater Department that we've been partnering closely with, Alex Gostelneski and Kevin Anub, engineers from Stormwater who can answer questions at the end of the presentation. So just a little bit about who Canyonlands is. We are an environmental community-based nonprofit regionally focused on San Diego. We were established in 2008 as part of a grassroots canyon protection movement called the Canyons Movement that emerged out of the Sierra Club. We were very much about advocacy and stewardship early on, but once Canyonlands was launched to make this movement permanent, we ended up becoming environmental land managers. So over time, we've become expert in urban conservation. We do interesting things like helicopter removal of invasive trees, and increasingly we're working on water quality and stream bed restoration, which is the focus of this conversation. But we are also very much community embedded. We focus on environmental and social justice. So we're always looking for ways to pull people and nature together around policy and advocacy, around the work itself. We do focus very strongly on nature-based solutions. That's, in this case, that's BGI. So if you want to know what BGI is for San Diego, and especially in these urban watersheds, this project that you're going to hear about today is really a central strategy. We also focus on integrative flood, fire, heat resilience in landscape scale planning and environmental projects that are very integrative in their scope and the way that they intersect with community interests. We have youth education and maybe most importantly, an equitable conservation workforce development program that is really focused on recruiting to entry-level on-the-job training into the environmental sector. To date, we've brought in, trained over 100 people who did not have a background in environmental management, who have gone on to jobs in that industry. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christina, who's going to start talking about the project. Thank
Can I
you.
ask you a quick question? Is Canyonlands, remind me, because I know you guys were here before the board on this, but is Canyonlands involved in the Maple Canyon restoration project?
Yes.
Okay.
We actually led the beginning of
That's
that
what I thought.
project. I'll say a little bit more about that at the end of the
Sure.
presentation, actually, but we started that project. It ended up being a little bit too big of a bite for us to chew. And so the
It's
city
right by my office. I understand what you're talking about.
the city took it over, but it definitely was a precursor to the work that you're going to hear about today.
Great, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for inviting us to speak today to you about the Manzanita project. Thanks, Eric, for the introduction. Thanks, Clay. So I'm the restoration ecologist on the project, and I'm going to introduce you first, as Eric said earlier, to the context of working in an urban environment. Restoration and using bioengineered stream restoration techniques are relatively common in Northern California, where you actually have water. However, down here, it's a little bit more challenging, and there's really not a very strong precedent for it. So we're going to introduce this project to you in this context. So first of all, our urban canyons, of course, are comprised of native habitats and native species. They're therefore conserved. They're part of the City of San Diego's multi-species conservation program. And most of these canyons, as you can see in this graphic, are actually conserved under the MHPA, which is the Multiple Habitat Preserve Area. That's the MSCP's preserve system. That, of course, constrains the development opportunities in canyon, which is a good thing. And it also provides ample of opportunities for sensible pedestrian recreation as well as education, such as outdoor classrooms, safe walk to school, which is really important for this project because the Ocean Discovery Institute is right adjacent to the canyon, and students walk across the canyon to go to the school. Of course, hiking, bird watching, citizen science, and workforce development, which is one of the key objectives for San Diego Canyonlands. So with those opportunities also come constraints, and those are very, very ample in our urban canyon systems. Of course, we have flood-controlled concrete-lined channels. We have hydromodification from surrounding development, and those surrounding development go all the way to the edge of the canyon, and in many, many cases, private properties actually overlap with creek alignments, so the creeks occur on private property. With that, of course, comes disturbance, trash encampments, as you can see in the middle slide here. And that ensues into water quality problems, flashy creek flows, less infiltration, also a climate change problem, erosion and creek incision, and then sedimentation. And if you are not familiar with the fourth parameter of jurisdictional delineations, it's on the right slide. It's shopping carts in the creek. So with the canyon, the City of San Diego water and sewer infrastructure being located in canyons, in the canyon bottoms for the majority of the canyons in San Diego, that of course creates an additional constraint. We have a linear infrastructure in the canyon bottoms that consists of culverts, a lot of concrete. We have creek incision, and if, as you can see in the slide on the left there, those manholes become towers, and that problem, of course, gets worse and worse as we get more erosion in the creeks. We have access easements that line the creeks or occur with the creek. So some of that access actually occurs in the creek invert. And this infrastructure, of course, needs to be repaired on a relatively regular basis, and that usually happens on a spot repair basis with concrete, with patches. If access easements need to be repaired, we get foreign materials like concrete and bricks into them. So all of this, of course, is a constraint to habitat restoration or a creek restoration. And then, of course, we also have the City of San Diego Municipal Court that really does not have a program to permit restoration. The majority of restoration projects in the city of San Diego occur with compensatory mitigation. And of course, with a compensatory mitigation project, the actual development project is already going through the permitting path. But if you have just a restoration project, there is none. So every restoration project right now requires a development permit. And that also gets complicated by the fact that if you are restoring a wetland, and wetlands are protected by the city of San Diego, that also kicks you into a development permit. Now, of course, you have to mitigate for anything that you do to wetlands, whether it's the city of San Diego or any other regulatory processes. But in this particular case, it kicks you into that development permit application. And a development permit application is not only very time consuming, we've been at this for 2.5 years, but also very costly. And if you are a nonprofit organization that works on grants, those grants usually don't account for paying City of San Diego staff for 2.5 years to develop your permit. And then, of course, am I going the wrong way? Oh, yes, I am. So what are the solutions to that? The solution is a system-wide permitting for habitat and stream restoration that creates sustainable canyon ecosystem with native species, adjusts and stabilizes creek morphology in spite of all these urban constraints that I just mentioned to you, promotes invasive species removal, creates functional aquatic resources and enhances water quality, and of course addresses climate change resiliency, adaptation, including carbon sequestration. So the goal with our Manzanita Creek project is to develop programmatic stream and habitat restoration solutions in collaboration with the city of San Diego and by the city of San Diego. That includes developing bioengineering standards and thresholds, developing environmental and restoration standards, pursuing restoration regulatory permits, and I'll get to that in a second, develop comprehensive monitoring methods, including peak flow reduction metrics and climate resiliency metrics, and identifying project sites that fit the solutions to promote streamlined permitting process. And we understand that there might be some projects that may not fit this program. There might be projects that are so constrained they have to use foreign materials such as concrete. So they would not fall under a programmatic permitting stream. So just to give you a little example why we are so interested in pursuing this, a few years ago in 2018, this team, together with the Groundwork San Diego nonprofit organization, worked on a stream restoration project in Chollas Creek. And we mentioned that earlier. I think Dave even said that, water flows in Chollas Creek are a really important item to be tackled. And in this particular case, this is a portion of Chollas Creek right at the intersection of where the Natural Creek meets a very, very long trapezoidal concrete channel. So in other words, I'm going to call it a chute because that's what it essentially is. And in order to accommodate this grade, in the 1930s, there were 2 grade controls installed. They were quite steep. So that's the picture on the left, those old grade controls, quite tall, that were completely deteriorated and had scour holes that were a mosquito breeding vector. So we worked with the County of San Diego and applied for a County of San Diego Vector Control Program grant. We removed the concrete grade controls, removed invasive species, planted native riparian habitat, and then installed riffles to reduce the flow velocities before the creek enters the chute, which stabilized the creek, reduced peak flows, and eliminated the mosquito breeding source. And you may see in the center picture that these riffles made out of rocks contain some foreign rock. For the Manzanita project, all of the rock will be native. So that's a lesson learned from this project. But just to illustrate this, how do I get the video going? Is that something you can do from there? This video has a start button. There, yes, if you could, oops. Oh, now you have to lie on your side. I'm so sorry. It wasn't like this when I tested it. But you can see how the creek flows across the riffles and how during a storm event, this video was taken before the planting occurred. We're already slowing down the flow significantly to a point where where the creek hits the chute, it's already reduced in velocity that, of course, we can't do anything about the concrete like trapezoidal channel, but at that point, it reduced peak flows significantly. So this is where our Manzanita Canyon study came from. It's a pilot study to see how we can line up with this idea of a programmatic permitting solution for the city of San Diego. So this is Manzanita Canyon. As you can see, it's completely surrounded by urban development. And not only this, but I guess this isn't working. At the downstream end, you can see it's the interchange between I-15 and I-805. It's a huge culvert there. The yellow line is the city of San Diego's MHPA that conserves and protects the canyon. But what's really important to show, and I'm going to walk up to this because I want you to see this. So this is our project boundary. Anyway. So what I'm trying to illustrate with this is that we're surrounded by private property. And one of the constraints of the restoration project was to stay within public, city-owned, either property or right-of-way. And you can see that all of the private property goes right up to this project boundary. And this isn't working, right? No, it isn't.
You're trying to use a digital pointer right now?
Oh, there. That's what thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate it. Okay. So this is the culvert here. And then when you see our property boundary, the creek is linear, but right in this area right here, and the entire upstream also, we have the property boundary go right up to the creek. So that, of course, creates some constraints in terms of stream restoration. So why did we pick Manzanita Canyon? First of all, on the left slide picture, you can see there is tremendous flooding of the canyon. This is Thorn Street. There's no curb. There's no sidewalk. Students need to walk from the urban environment to the Ocean Discovery Institute. And when the creek floods, there's basically no path, no access. Of course, water flows downstream, and this flooding at the head of the canyon causes tremendous erosion downstream. The center slide, you can see some of those scour holes. They're as tall as me. Now I'm very short, but still they're really, really tall scour holes as a result of the hydromodification. And then at the end of the canyon, by this culvert under the freeways, we get a regular sedimentation, and the city of San Diego has to come in and maintain this culvert regularly. As you can see, it sometimes gets completely sedimented in, and the sewer infrastructure is threatened by those erosion problems. Canyonlands received $3 million from the California Natural Resource Agency Urban Greening Grant to work on this project, and we're really grateful for this. So the solution is to design a comprehensive restoration of the entire canyon that includes restoring the creek and stabilizing the creek morphology by slowing down and spreading out flows, reducing peak flows through the canyon, encouraging energy dissipation and water infiltration, and using nature-based materials and bioengineered methods, laying down the bank where it's feasible. And again, with some of the sewer infrastructure constraints, it's not very feasible in our case, and I'll get to that in a second. Planning to withstand a 200-year flood. City of San Diego requires 100-year flood, but this project is actually planned for a 200-year. Removing non-native species in the entire canyon, planting native wetland and upland species, and enhancing sensitive species habitat. So here are the constraints.
Sorry, would you prefer that we ask you questions as you go through the slides, or do you want us to wait till the
I
end?
don't care. And honestly, it's up to you.
Could you go back to that last
Yeah,
slide then,
sure.
if that's okay?
Yeah.
This is something that's been like on my mind for the last several years. Planning for a 200-year flood. And I thank you for saying that the city's rules require 100-year flood, but I just find that number arbitrary. I find that it's changed, and I find frankly that it's irrelevant given what we know about climate change and atmospheric rivers. So I guess in non-scientific terms, when you say it's planning to withstand a 200-year flood, what will that look like to folks in the community on the ground?
Well, again, I totally agree with you. In the light of climate change, the number 200-year becomes irrelevant. It's just a box that we had to check when we did the hydraulic analysis. Because we wanted to make sure that we design the project that it's stable.
Right.
For
So
these flashy flows.
that's exactly my
Right.
question. So for the people on the ground in the community, what does it mean to design a project that is stable to that hypothetical standard of a
Right.
200-year flood?
And I really appreciate the question because that puts it also in the context of not only the urban environment, but also San Diego, with ephemeral streams. Manzanita Canyon is an ephemeral stream. And the problem with climate change is that we get these infrequent flows, but they're very, very heavy and they're very powerful. And so I think that's a much more of a planning target that we need to design these for is these flashy flows that, just race through the system. They don't provide any opportunities for infiltration. However, they have a tremendous power that results in a lot of scour, erosion, and sedimentation. And that's what we're planning this to withstand. So we want the creek morphology to still be dynamic. So we still want to give the creek an opportunity to find its own path as these events occur. So we don't want to have an engineering system that confines them into one, specific location. But on the other hand, we also need to prevent said scour and erosion. And so that's, I think, what our design guideline is and ought to be, is to make sure that these flashy flows, whatever they are, if they're 100-year or 200-year, in terms of the algorithm, the mathematics, and I'm not a hydrologist, I'm a restoration ecologist.
I'll just add to
Yeah.
that about the community impact. So the experience of the canyon. So the canyon, while there are constructed features within it, the constructed features are all made from nature-based materials by design. And the experience of the canyon is that it's still a natural canyon. It will not appear to be built. It will not, to the untrained eye, you won't really see the work that was done. And I mean that at the very end of implementation, before the plants have grown in. You really won't know that the space has been engineered to withstand greater erosional impacts. So the experience of the canyon for the community will be that it's still completely natural. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know if I'm asking it poorly. My question is, what engineering are you doing? So like if a community member comes to us and says, what are the improvements in Manzanita Canyon? What is being designed to withstand a 200-year flood? That's my question.
Yeah, and I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
If you don't mind me, I'm going to continue because I will actually describe the features that we're installing, and maybe that answers your question. Yeah. Okay, so again, where am I? Here. So this slide is kind of a significant depiction of what's occurring in the canyon right now. You can see the incision of the bank. Now, the private property in this case goes all the way up to the edge of the creek. Luckily, not through the creek, but up to the edge of the creek. So in this case, we were not able to fix this bank, which of course creates a little bit of a constraint when you're trying to restore the morphology of a continuous system, right? Now you have this little obstacle in the middle that you can't do anything about, which of course has trigger effect downstream. So unfortunately, in this particular case, we had to stay within public property, but I just wanted to illustrate what we were working with so that you have an understanding of what the constraints are relative to restoring a canyon in an urban environment, an urban system. So we had to be confined to San Diego property boundary, which, as I said, constrains the restoration of a continuous natural creek system. We also have very steep slopes on either side. As I said earlier, this is an ephemeral flowing canyon. It's dry conditions that are typical of the city of San Diego. Usually our canyons are second and third order tributaries to blue line streams. So we often don't have the surface to groundwater connection to help us establish wetlands. So when we go into laying down banks, floodplain widening, we have to be very wary of the fact that we need to have that groundwater surface water connection to make the wetland establishment sustainable in perpetuity. We also have access challenges, of course, because of the configuration. There are sensitive habitats in city wetlands in the canyon that we're not touching. We're avoiding the city wetlands, but we're also restoring those areas that have non-native species that we're removing. And then in terms of the sewer infrastructure and access easements, of course, that sewer infrastructure that, as I said earlier, lines the bottom of the canyon with the access easements parallel to that really confines what we can do in terms of laying down the floodplain, because we just don't have the room and we cannot touch the infrastructure. That includes also the patches and the repairs that have been done. These pictures illustrate some of the patching, and that is to protect the sewer alignment, the city of San Diego's infrastructure, because with the incision of these creeks and the inverts lowering, all of a sudden you have exposed pipes, you have these manholes that are rising, and that has to be repaired. And our intent is, by restoring the creek morphology, to actually lift the invert and protect the sewer infrastructure, rather than laying down the bank and keeping the invert bottom at the same elevation, where by our methods, we're hoping over time, the invert is actually going to rise. We also have planting restrictions around the sewer infrastructure. And then, of course, there's maintenance considerations, because after everything is said and done, we want the restoration project to be maintained without using those foreign materials. So when we get into the planning phase, as Clayton has already illustrated, we did very intensive public involvement. San Diego Canyonlands regularly involves the community, and for this project has done so for 10 years. We have partnerships with the Ocean Discovery Institute, that's the institute right next to the canyon, with Groundwork San Diego and other nonprofits, and Canyonlands conducts regular meetings with the residents around Manzanita Canyon. In fact, I have a friend who lives about 3 blocks away from there, and they're very, very familiar with what's going on. And then, of course, we're working with local community groups. We did our due diligence regarding baseline studies, and I'm not going to go into great detail, and this is probably not an exhaustive list, but what was really important, of course, to do are hydrological and hydraulic analyses, because we really want to make sure that we are planning this restoration project to be sustainable and to be functional. We did biological baseline surveys and sensitive species habitat assessments because of the sensitivity of the canyon. Did jurisdictional delineations. We are ongoing consulting with the Native American community for this project. Geologic and paleontological reviews were conducted, and then, of course, community engagement, as we just heard. And here, hopefully, this answers your question. So this is the design that we came up with. It's 2 components. It's the stream bed stabilization features. So they're in-stream stabilization features that slow down the flows, that dissipate energy, trap sediment, and as I said earlier, over time will lift the invert. The methods are so again, this is all informed by a hydraulic analysis, but also given the constraints with the private properties so close to the canyon. So in some areas where we wanted to put some in-stream stabilization features, we weren't able to, because they have to be keyed in on either side in the uplands far enough that they don't erode or the creek doesn't scour around them. And in some cases, we just didn't have the room to do that.
When you come up against those private property owners, do you contact them to see if they'll cooperate?
Absolutely.
So where you're saying they've just said no in those instances?
Well, that's a question maybe for Clayton. In our case, we needed to stay within the city right away.
To involve private property for the city permits would have dramatically complicated and made it more difficult. So she's going to go into more detail about the permitting, but basically we started with a site development permit. The city asked us to go through that process, and we were able to downgrade it to a right of entry, not really downgrade. We went through the full SDP, and we ended up with a right of entry, and that was through design strategy. If we had involved private property and there were a couple other issues that we could have done differently, it would have just blown the project up.
Okay, so it was a strategic choice.
It was.
Got it.
Can I follow up with that, please? Now, private property, I know that you don't want to involve them with getting the permit and stuff like that. Is there any effort to purchase those land so that it becomes public or something like that? Because like California Land Trust and all the stuff, they're always looking for projects. I know somebody who works there, and that he's always asking me, we're looking for a project in San Diego for us to do?
So in terms of acquisition as a strategy, first, we would have to get totally separate funding to do that, which probably makes it not possible for any individual project. If we end up with a programmatic approach and we align that with the city's need to expand their multiple habitat planning area acreage, there might be some strategic convergence there, where then acquisition becomes something that public funding could support because it's large enough, significant enough, and meets other planning goals for the city.
Well, California Land Trust is a nonprofit organization, so, and they do purchase land for the public.
Right.
Yeah.
Great suggestion.
Yes, actually, that is a great suggestion because, again, this is not just Manzanita Canyon. This happens in almost every canyon in San Diego. So any of those restoration projects that would fall under the streamlined approach had to tackle exactly that same issue. Yeah, thank you so much. So in order to get a little bit into the nitty gritty and be compatible to that previous presentation, that was really awesome. I'm in awe. So the methods are, we use recycled river rock or cobble. So the river cobble that is extant on the site, we will reuse to build these. So we're going to excavate a big deep hole, refill it with the extant cobble, and that's about 3 to 12 inches. And then on top of it, we layer the rounded native rock. And that's the native rock that kind of provides those riffles and the speed bumps, so to say, the velocity control. They're to 18 to 24 inches, and they will be sourced from local suppliers, but they will be native rock. So there's nothing, dark colored or red colored. It's going to be, it's going to look like a natural stream cobble. And as I said, they need to be keyed into the side slopes. And because that goes into the existing sewer alignment, access alignment that occurs parallel to the creek, they need to be drivable. So this is what these sections show you. Let's see if I can make this one. Oops. Oh, there we go. Okay, so so this here is the profile, right? So this is basically a section that goes through. So this is a grade control right here. So it goes through this side of the grade control and it shows you the speed bump, so to say. This here is the section that goes through one of these controls, so this way. And you can see how on the sides, right here, it's keyed in to the side slopes. And you can also see the layered cobble structure. Another thing that I said earlier is we need to keep the utilities in place. We cannot touch them, so that's also a little bit of a constraint. Then in addition to that, we're also planning for stream bank stabilization features because of the incision and the creek, the eroded creek banks. And the purpose of these are distribute and flow and slow the peak flows, stabilize the banks from further erosion, and restore the banks with native vegetation. We're doing this through the installation of bioengineered methods. In this particular case, we're mostly using fascines by laying down the bank, collecting mule fat cuttings, preparing those live stake fascines. In most cases, we have to use rock toe production right here because, again, we want to make sure that this system doesn't float away during a flashy high velocity peak flow. And then we site design these. I have 3 sections here for you, kind of 3 illustrations. We will, depending on where we are in the canyon, and I can illustrate where these go. So we have 2 that are going right in here. We have 1 in here, and then we will also have 1 in here. We will site design them because every area of incised bank will probably need a slightly different treatment depending on what the upland area looks like that's adjacent to it. And then I was mentioning to you earlier that we also have planting constraints. So the Public Utilities Department of the City of San Diego that owns the infrastructure has planting guidelines that requires that within 10 feet of the infrastructure, we can only plant shallow-rooted, low-growing vegetation under 12 inches, and within 30 feet, we cannot have any trees. So these riparian trees that we're planting, mainly sycamores, have to be 30 feet away from the sewer infrastructure. In addition to that, we also have brush management zones. Again, this is a factor of being in an urban environment. So you can see okay, it's not working. Anyway, you can see the residence, right? Right here. So within 100 feet of a building, you have a brush management zone for fire management. So that's this hatching here. The PUD infrastructure hatching is this one right here, and I apologize for the blurry graphic. And the BMZ is right here. So along the entire restoration area of the canyon, we are constrained by PUD planting guidelines and brush management zone guidelines. There's species restrictions in the BMZ guidelines and also a minimum density limitation. We can't plant them very densely. Yes.
What are the gray lines that protrude into the stream?
This one? This? Oh, these? These are the stabilization features.
So they
They're
stabilize.
the speed bumps, yes, that stabilize the morphology
And they're
of the creek.
constructed of,
They are constructed of why is this not working anymore? Yeah, previous slide, or actually two back.
Yeah, trying to go back.
Yeah. There. So they're constructed out of rock. They're the cobbles and the rock, yeah.
so they're going up or down or something.
So when you look at this picture, the color graphic, you see these things here. Okay, I'm going to walk to it. So.
Able to use them.
The stabilization. Yeah. So that's what they look like in sections. So a section across this way. So the stabilization features are basically this. The red is our area and temporary attack area where we're excavating, refilling, backfilling. So that's this section here is this. Graphic 4 is also this. So it's basically kind of a rock speed bump. The section through this is where you can see kind of the. Thank you. Where you can see the concave feature of the so-called speed bump. So it's basically just a pile of rocks in non-technical terms. And then we also, of course, have sensitive species habitat in the canyon that we're not touching. And we have a lot of areas that have ornamental species from those neighboring residential properties, as well as non-native species, a lot of woody tree, non-native trees that we're removing. And that's where we're planting additional sensitive species habitat, because we have two sensitive species in the canyon, and that's the Crotch's bumblebee, that's a state of California candidate species, and the California gnatcatcher, it's federally threatened. So now we're getting into the nitty gritty. This is where the rubber hits the road, of course, and that's the permitting. So first of all, I wanted to say that the whole project is consistent with the city adopted City Heights Urban Greening Plan, the City Park Master Plan, and the Climate Action Plan. And if you have questions about those, Clayton will be able to help you out much better than me. The City of San Diego permitting process, Clayton already alluded to that. And I said earlier that the project does not neatly fit into a City of San Diego available permitting category. So initially, because of the restoration triggers a development permit, we were instructed to apply for a site development permit under a City of San Diego discretionary review, which of course requires CEQA and also requires these very time-consuming and costly cycle reviews. Through the wonderful collaboration with the Stormwater Department, we've been able to now kick that into a application for a development permit, which is a grading right-of-way permit, which is a ministerial review and much less time-consuming as well as costly. So for that program or the solutions that we're going to be developing in the future, those standards, we're hoping to keep it within the ministerial review. That's the whole impetus for developing a standards system. And we're also applying for a stormwater, for a right of entry permit with the Stormwater Department. As I said, all of these require CEQA review. And then in terms of the regulatory permitting application, that is now being promoted as a streamlined permitting process for all of these restoration projects, hopefully, fingers crossed, and we're really, really grateful that these exist. It's the California Cutting the Green Tape Statutory Exemption for Restoration Projects, the CERP process, which is the CEQA process, streamlined for restoration projects. California Department of Fish and Wildlife has a brand new permit. We're one of the first applicants for an RMP, a restoration management permit, that combines the 1602 permits with their incidental take permits, because we do have those sensitive species in the canyon. And then, of course, with the regional board, and that was mentioned before, the stream restoration general order and the consistency thereof. And this project was specifically designed from the very beginning to be consistent with the SERGO. That was number one goal. It prohibits the use of non-native materials, as we just discussed, unless they're directly tied to restoration. For example, to fix the upstream, the head of the canyon storm problem. Provide climate change buffers through restoration, avoid impacts to wetlands and aquatic resources as feasible. Most projects will probably have a built-in mitigation within the project of stream restoration. In our case, because, as I just said, we had to use some concrete culvert to reduce the flood problem at the head of the canyon that I showed you in the very beginning, that required compensatory mitigation, and we are doing some stream widening at the bottom of the canyon and some wetlands establishment as a result. Well, with this, this is my last slide. Our conclusion is, of course, a comprehensive restoration program solution is going to be really, really important to tackle the constraints of urban creeks. We also learned that highly constrained canyons will require more bioengineering features to stabilize the creek morphology versus widening the floodplain. I think I explained that to you earlier, that we're really constrained in space. And then, of course, streamlining City of San Diego permitting processes for restoration projects that include stream restoration solutions for urban canyons, bioengineering standards, streamlined programmatic city and regulatory permitting, and then all of this, of course, in the context of cutting the green tape measure of the state legislature. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Clayton.
Thanks. So I just want to thank you again and give a little bit of historical context of how we came to this point and why we think this project is so important. So Canyonlands was officially launched in 2008. And not long after that, the founder of the organization, Eric Bowlby, started working on what he called the Streambed Toolkit. And this was essentially a set of streambed bioengineering practices modified for our local conditions, for the ephemeral streams that were the focus of the Canyonlands organization. And they zeroed in on Maple Canyon as the canyon that had the most need. And they started developing these, they started modifying streambed bioengineering for these specific conditions. Turns out that that canyon was large, super complex, really in an emergency state. And it really wasn't possible for the small emerging nonprofit of Canyonlands to do that properly. So the city took that over, and while they modified our initial design, really the idea of streambed bioengineering and bringing back natural processes to reinforce the canyon, or engineering to provide sufficient reinforcement so that the canyon can continue to function as a natural canyon, is still being done in Maple Canyon. Fast forward to now, we've picked a few smaller sites where we started focusing, where we could dive into these particular practices and solve problems. And what emerged when I came into the organization 6 years ago for me was that it isn't simply that we need these practices to address climate change, erosional impacts, upstream hydromodification impacts. Those, of course, are core to what we're trying to do with a nature-based solution. It's also addressing all of the jurisdictional, bureaucratic, private property constraints that are in these spaces. And at the same time, attempt to deal with or attempt to have an efficacious result to deal with this suite of community problems that E.O. Gibson talked about just earlier in this meeting. Water quality issues, quality of life issues for the neighborhood. And then emerging right now in our current process with the Manzanita project, how do you fund the maintenance of this over time? And so we're grappling with all of that. This is very much a pilot project. It is very much a nature-based solutions project. And if we can take this project, turn it into some kind of programmatic process where policy at the city is modified to enable this, where if we can get programmatic CEQA, some kind of larger program set up so that individual canyons are all known ahead of time, folded into a single program, then we can do things like achieve land acquisition in concert with this, or look for watershed scale peak flow reduction, watershed scale improvement to water quality. So this is one little project, but those are the big ambitious goals that we have with it. Thank you so much. And if you have engineering questions, we do have our partners from Stormwater here to answer those as well. Thanks. Do you have any questions for us?
So I wanted to know, what is the significance of the San Diego Municipal Court has no jurisdiction? Is there a significance to how you operate? You said that, you mentioned that early on in your slide presentation. I just wondered, well, why is that important? I guess I'm asking.
So the San Diego Municipal Court is a set of regulations and ordinances that guide development projects.
You're not considered a development project.
Well, we are. And that's what I was trying to say earlier. So unfortunately, restoration projects are considered a development project. And that's exactly what we're trying to change with this program and this programmatic permitting approach. We're trying to make it possible for the city of San Diego that currently doesn't have a vehicle to permit restoration projects other than through compensatory mitigation. So we're trying to enable the city of San Diego, the city of San Diego in collaboration with us, we're as a team trying to make it possible for the city of San Diego to permit restoration projects. And we haven't figured out exactly what that's going to look like yet.
I think Alex would like
to
chime in on that.
Sure.
This is really for a moment. Alex Kostomelski, Senior Civil Engineer, Stormwater Department. Just wanted to say that the Muni Code right now, the way the development is defined is like if you do any grading, if you do any digging and moving of any material anywhere, that's considered development.
Okay.
So there's a challenge and there's clearly to all of us very clear that development is not the same as restoration, but the Muni Code doesn't have that distinction. So we will be working with Canyonlands in modifying the Muni Code, but it's a lengthy process. You have to go through council and all that. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, and part of the complication is that these are restoration projects by definition. We're trying to put back natural systems in a more resilient form. But there are constructed elements within it, even though they use natural materials. So it really falls into this gray area. And that's why I believe eventually we will need some kind of program at the city that defines exactly the outcomes of this and defines it as restoration. And that will help with code development to facilitate it.
Okay, thank you.
And even if you didn't have to grade, just by the pure fact that you're affecting a city regulated wetland automatically kicks you into this development category.
So my other question is, when you are working in the stream and they're confining structures, you showed a trapezoidal bridge. It's been what I've seen that if brush is alongside and you have a big water event, it can block the throughway and cause flooding. So how do you ensure that the vegetation you put in doesn't end up impacting those types of situations?
Good question.
Yeah, that's actually part of the design. So when we do our hydraulic analyses, we, and again, I'm not the hydrologist, maybe actually you guys can answer that in a better way, but we calculate the resistance.
That the plants can withstand.
The resistance
they
that
become
that
debris.
a flow should not experience in order to flow properly.
And that may be where one of the ways that your 200-year flood comes into play. So Stephanie, my viewpoint about that is everything is vague, but if it's greater than what we're anticipating, it should be more resistant to it.
Right.
And that's better. That's what I look at it.
Right.
Not that it's, because I asked, what do you do if you have more than a 300-year flood? And it says, well, it's catastrophic and you forget it.
Yeah, actually, I would say that there were some particular reasons why we chose that number. One was to demonstrate proof of concept that nature-based approaches could be
More
effective,
resilient.
that could provide flood resilience. Another was that if we went for higher than 200-year, higher goal than that, we would start to have something that looks like a constructed stream bed. There's something that looks like typical check dams. And it would start to fall outside of the range of something that could be considered restoration, even undercutting the green tape and Surgo. So there were reasons why that was kind of the upper limit.
And it also makes sense in the context of planning a system like this, because you have to look ahead. Things change, and we don't want to. Creeks and streams are dynamic, right? And despite the fact that we don't really have that much water here in San Diego, as I said earlier, even with ephemeral flows, we do get these flashy flows. And so we just need to armor the system, basically. And one of the things that is really important to remember is we cannot restore anything really back to how it historically was, because things have changed. We have hydromodification, we have climate change. So all the hydraulic analyses we do are done in foresight of what is to come, and that's where that 200-year flood limit comes into play.
Thank you so much, everyone. We really appreciate it. Any more? No?
Thank you.
Moving on to our two action items. Action item number 8. David, do you want to introduce that, please?
First, Chair Strong, let's verify that there are no members of the public online or in the room who wish to address that informational item.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And seeing that we have none, thank you. Yes, we have 2 action items. Item number 8 for the proposed 2026 board meeting schedule. Tentative resolution R9 2025-0170.
I'd like to move that with the comment that I'm really thrilled to see that Temecula is back on the schedule next year.
I'll second that.
Chris, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Cantu?
Aye.
Dr. Olson?
Aye.
Ms. Aye. Ms. Warren?
I don't know, should I vote on this since I won't be here? Yes. Okay, aye.
Chair Strawn?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And the final action item is a resolution honoring the service of Board Member Stephanie Warren. Tentative resolution R9 2025-0186. And I will start it off just by acknowledging and thanking Stephanie Warren for being such an outstanding board member, asking such insightful questions, bringing her legal expertise and passion for surfing and the community perspective. Without her involvement, carrying off the Environmental Justice Symposium in 2017 and 2019 would have been a challenge, but her contribution to that and to the outreach that we conducted through many organizations throughout the region in the 2010s was invaluable. And that perspective was much appreciated. Thank you, Stephanie.
Do we have other comments from the board?
I was going to make a motion to for the resolution. And also thanking her for her service.
I'll second the motion reluctantly.
Thank you. And before we call the vote, I just want to add my appreciation that particularly for your help from trying to explain to us the legal pathways through the Tijuana River restoration project and those huge lawsuits that really helped push it along, I believe, and you were key in that whole process. So I appreciate that. And you're going to call a vote?
Can I say?
Oh, yeah, no, please. Barbara, there you go.
Well, I'd like to say how much I've enjoyed Stephanie's company on the board. Although we're all in so far away places, you don't get to have quite as much as you'd like to. Her legal expertise has really been a benefit. And I sometimes like to go forward chomping at the bit. And her wisdom has always given me pause and allow me to think through things in a better fashion, I'll say. So I'm greatly appreciative for your service and in all ways, but for me, especially in that way. Thank you.
To our North Star.
Yeah.
Chris?
Ms. Cantu?
Aye.
Dr. Olson?
Aye.
Ms. Chu?
Aye.
Chair Strawn?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Can I just say something really quick since I broke my microphone on my last day? I just wanted to say thank you to the staff. I know a lot of you guys aren't in the room right now, but if you could pass it along that I stand in awe of the work that you do with like very little recognition and often very little appreciation. You guys are like the real stewards of water quality in San Diego and beyond. So as someone who does enjoy the benefits of your work on a pretty regular basis, I just thank you for everything you do. And I know it's been hard and I've had a front row seat to all of that. So thank you for all of your hard work, and to the board, it's been really fun. So thanks, guys.
Thank you. Now, I have the resolution here, and I think that Stephanie would prefer that we not necessarily read it word for word. But from all of us, you know how much we've appreciated you. And David, do we need a picture here?
Yeah, they want a picture. I think the chair should go up too.
I don't want to get up here because I'll make you too short. Time. And with that, I believe we're finished with our open agenda. We're going to secure for a closed session. Do you want to make a comment on that?
Yeah, the board will consider item 10J in closed session.
Right, and then at the completion of that, we'll reconvene very quickly and close this session out. So I appreciate all your attendance today, and thank you. Our meeting is now adjourned.